Hello, welcome to the Brain Scrub, a somewhat improvised approach to mental health. My name is Glenn Sollers. Thanks for tuning into today's episode, which is a bit about stress, a bit about conflict, and the importance of personal ownership in your life, taking accountability for your circumstances where you can. Of course, there's extreme cases where things are put upon us and we just have to deal with it. However, there's many conflicts in the world, many stresses that we might have, where ultimately, if you consider you, you are at the root of it. Even though I see us living in a world where we can easily point fingers at others. It's my work, it's this person, it's their attitude, it's their state of mind, whatever it might be. It's easy to point blame at other things, which creates a story about the situation, and we're making things up. And those stories that we create about the situation actually spiral us down into more negativity and a sense of, what can I do? It's hopeless. A bit of victim mentality, if you will. Poor me, look what I'm good dealing with. And then we tell other people, look what I have to deal with. And I've done this and I still do it at times. And it gets me nowhere other than creates more anxiety, more stress, a lack of sleep, illness, things like this. And this came through to me yesterday when I was listening to Bill Eddy's podcast, It's All Your Fault, which I love listening to. It's quite fascinating what he talks about, and so many things have really made sense to me in my life. And one thing that he talks about is borderline personality disorders and different personality disorders, and how we might look at people and say they have a personality disorder and, oh, poor me, they have to deal with this personality disorder. But what I've learned is to appreciate that people that might have this, they just do what they do. They may not be conscious of it. They think they're doing the right thing. So all I can do in these situations is control, how do I react to it? How do I set boundaries? How do I move forward? Because I'm not necessarily dealing with somebody who is a rational human being who's going to get it. So that's number one that came up for me. Number two is, in his podcast, he was talking a bit about parental alienation and how ultimately at the root of parental alienation, there is something that's going on that whoever's being alienated might have contributed to. And we can easily, and I can easily point fingers at my ex-wife and say this was the issue. And of course, there was many things that were going on, and there's other things that I'm speculating about. However, ultimately, if we can change our thinking around the child does not want to see the other parent, what is the problem there to investigate? And sadly, this doesn't happen too often, where judges and the family court system actually try to identify the problem. It's more like what's in the best interest of the child versus, well, what's really at the root of this? Why is the child not wanting to see the other parent? Let's figure that out. Now, I'm just going to put that aside because that's going to spiral me down into upset, and I don't want to go there. And I'm going off in different tangents here, and I hope you're following me. One thing I learned years ago when I started doing self-awareness work was something called a clearing conversation. And at first I thought, this is not right, because what had to happen in the conversation is one had to clear the air with somebody else that might have triggered you. So somebody said something or did something where you might have gotten upset by it. You're holding some negative energy about it. It's creating a disconnect in the relationship. It's causing stress. It's causing conflict. And the whole premise was that you would stand in front of this individual and tell your story, that this is what you did. And the other individual's job was to stand there and listen and then say back to you, tell me a bit about you. What is it that you're doing that's creating this? How are you part of this? So it was kind of like talking to a mirror and then having to face a deeper truth inside you about what am I doing or not doing that's creating this? What is an expectation maybe I have of you that I see you doing or you're not doing? But really, that's my problem. You're just doing what you're doing, and your actions are causing a reaction within me. Now, what that does is it gives one power to look within yourself and have greater influence and control over, now what do I do? Versus relying on the external to change or do something different, which may or may not happen, which leaves one powerless with no agency in resolving the matter. Of course, there's certain things that one needs to give others feedback on. However, in a lot of cases, it is something that I have within me that's causing me to get upset. And if I don't take the time to actually consider what that is, why is this causing me stress? Why is it what they said causing me inner conflict? Why is it causing me upset? What's going on for me? What did I do to contribute this? What did I not do to contribute to this? What action, if I took right now, would make a difference in how I feel about the situation? Maybe I need to remove myself. Maybe I need to figure out how can I behave differently. Maybe I need to reset my expectations. Maybe I need to forgive the other individual. Maybe I need to understand, I wonder what they're going through to get them where they are today. Like people who complain about their work sometimes will say, they did it again. The senior leaders don't understand what we're going through. They make these decisions. They don't consider our circumstance. And I work with leadership teams. I've worked in organizations. Generally, when people make decisions, they do it for particular reason. Otherwise, why on earth would they do it? And if I take the time to consider, I wonder what's going on, what's happening in the world that maybe they need to deal with. What pressures are they dealing with? What's on their plate that maybe led them to this decision? Now, by taking the time to look within, you can start then taking ownership. This is my truth, which isn't easy. And if I consider my son as an example, what my truth was, and I've shared this in other podcasts, was I never stood up for me. I gave in for things. I empowered my ex-wife to be the primary caregiver of my son by me saying, if he's sick, yes, for sure, he can stay with you. And then I wondered, why on earth is it when he is sick, he needs to stay with his mom? Well, it's no wonder because I gave in. I didn't step up for my beliefs. There was a time where my ex wanted him to go to a different school because she felt he didn't fit into the public school system. I didn't feel that was the right thing. I gave in. I didn't stick up for myself. I made me not important, which I've done through a great part of my life. And as a result, he went to this other school, but eventually went back to the public school system because he couldn't stand it. But I didn't stand up for my truth because I felt, again, I'm not that important. I don't matter. Now, by doing this kind of analysis, you can start having that agency in, okay, that person did this. I'm making it mean this. Deep inside, it means that I don't really matter. Wow. What do I do now? I do matter. Maybe I need to advocate for my needs more effectively. Maybe I need to not fear repercussions that may come back at me. And I've dealt a lot with that when I grew up. There was always a repercussion for me standing up for myself. And you can start connecting the dots through your timeline through your history, through your experiences, and realize that the way you are, what stresses you out, is not new, generally speaking. It is something you've lived with for a long time. And by diving down a bit deeper and figuring out what that is, you can start making the stress about you and not about others. Like sometimes I get feedback from people and I take in the feedback. I'm open to listening. And then I don't say, well, what is it about you that's causing this feedback? However, I'd love to say that to people because sometimes I feel like I'm the problem. But other people also need to see how they show up in relations with others that might be causing the problem. Because it's easy to point fingers and say, you do this, you do that. And it seems like for me, I bring that on and that's great, but I'm open to feedback. However, the other thing is to stop sometimes before you give somebody feedback and say, what is that person doing that is not meeting my expectations? Does that align to something within me that maybe I value in that other individual, that they do this, that they make this a priority or whatever, and I can't do it? Maybe it's something that I have learned in the past to be offended by, and they're just triggering it for me. They're triggering a past event. Maybe I just need to let it go and just know that that person's doing the best they can. Whatever it might be. But look within when it comes to stress. So in your life, what I would encourage you to do is to list all those things that stress you out, all those people that you're in conflict with, and then think, for each of those, what is within my control and influence? And there's likely some there that you can't do anything about. So then we just need to figure out, well, how do I adapt to that? But the ones that you can control or influence, to think about, what is it that I'm making it mean about the other person, but more so, what am I making that mean about me? When I can start doing that, I can start figuring out a plan of, now what do I do? What needs to be done so I can put that away? Because if we hang on to stress, and I've experienced this, I've experienced burnout, you're just piling things on. And then things will get worse and worse and worse. And then your wick, so to speak, will get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter until you explode, or you get ill, or you start taking it out on other people, or you snap at other people because of your own internal state of mind. And then you may put that onto other people, and now they have to live with it. Even though it starts and ends with how you process information. And the more you hang on to, the more negativity you run into. And I believe that many of us run away from this through looking at Facebook, looking at TikTok, whatever it might be, distracting ourselves from our inner truth and not dealing with it. And it's always going to be there. It's like you're building a wall around you to build up your defenses, to try to protect yourself. And while you're entertaining yourself inside your walls, but the walls are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to eat you up. If you can create some action plans around, what expectations do I need to let go of? What actions do I need to take? What can I do to adapt to the situation? How have I contributed to this? Do I need to apologize to somebody and clear the air? And not through texting or emailing, through an actual phone call or ultimately a face-to-face visit, rather than complaining about the situation, which is called a persistent complaint about something else because you're making it mean something generally about them and you. Then you have power. Then you have control. Then you can focus on what can be done versus what can't be done. And A big thing here, a big truth here is identifying, is this a pattern in my life? How does it show up? Where does it show up? With who does it show up? And then make an effort to change it, to catch yourself in the moment saying, here I go again. I'm going down this path of not feeling good enough. Stop. Choose a different path. Rewire yourself. And by doing so, you'll reduce your conflict. You'll reduce your stress levels. You will sleep a lot better. And I am a shining example of this in many ways. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I sleep well every night. Well, for most nights. When I'm traveling, I don't. But I go to bed very quickly now, where I never used to, because I have greater control and agency over how I choose to deal with a situation. Folks, just want to remind you to please share this podcast with others if you like it. Would love to get some reviews as well. Please be willing to give me a review, 5-star ideally, but hey, I also like to get feedback, so please let me know. Folks, thanks for listening.